So we're going to talk about hard seltzer, and the topic is huge. There could be many ways of taking it. We're going to take the homebrew approach, and I'm going to try to make it as similar as possible to your current homebrew settings. So what is hard seltzer? Basically bubbly water with alcohol and some very light flavor and aroma or something. Normally this something is a citric fruit or some sort of fruit or something spicy like ginger. Other names: spiked seltzer, hard sparkling water, and few things of similar nature. It was created in US about a decade ago, and the first commercial batch was in 2013, and it was lingering in there, gaining popularity until 2018 and 19 became huge popular. And as you know, there is a company there quite famous, and that company this year in the summer has sold 3 million units per month in Ontario alone. And they are forecasting for 2021 expected sales in that kind of beverage, 2.5 billion in US alone. So that's one of the reasons people are brewing it more, variations of it, because it has a nice appeal, and it goes for the people that are looking for a low carb, low calorie, keto friendly, modern, and whatever else drink. And if you need way more reasons for drinking it, the calories obviously comes from mostly the alcohol and a little bit of back sweetening, but even from back sweetening, people are using, the companies are using stevia and things like that. So I've heard of some companies with 3.8 calories in those 200 mLs, and they're like 70 calories or somewhere of that nature. So for people that like to count calories and 1 or 2 grams of carb, that's pretty interesting. So the difference between the beers we do as well is you have no leftover sugar from unfermented grain. The sugars come from added sugars or sugars from fruits. So it's a different ball game. You can also drink under the sun and you won't have a skunky feeling from it. And yeah, it's obviously nothing really extreme, so it's very popular for one of those reasons. And when you do homebrew, the challenges I have found is the main one is to keep the yeast alive, because the yeast needs a bunch of minerals and other compounds to survive. And it gets a lot of that from the minerals from the water and from things that the grain on the mashing and all that process. Now, when you do a hard seltzer, you have none of that. It's just water and sugar. And you add a little bit of minerals, and you have to add something to compensate the missing parts. And if you don't, it stalls really badly, and it can get challenging to restart again. Another thing that I found, as some people are trying some of the seltzer today, is that this much of mistake is going to look this big into the seltzer because it's really, really, really thin. Right? And another thing that I noticed is when you put in the keg in the beginning, if you say, oh, there's too much taste, by the middle of the keg, it's okay taste, and by the end of it is not enough taste. So it's one of the challenges. We are going to talk about the process and how to overcome something like that. But for example, I did, to clean up mine, some of them I did cold crash. And the first cans I was doing it, it was, wow, this is great. By the middle of it, it was like, where did the taste go? Because it's really thin. So there's a bunch of things we can do to avoid that. And you should just be aware, maybe it won't make a difference for you. Also, when you're brewing it, you have two choices. One, you're going to boil your fruit to sanitize together when you're cooking it. We are going to talk about how to brew it. Or you're going to add it afterwards, like a dry hop, like when you do with the beer as well. So we have a few examples. Can you guys see my mouse? Yeah, okay. So on the left here is the so-called Schwartz hard seltzer. I did a bunch of dark sugars from the Schwartz beer that I was going to do, and I did not let it finish fermentation in purpose, so I could have some sugar left over. I stopped a little bit too early, and I'm waiting to see if it ferments a little bit more, and I add some ginger, and the ginger alone balanced really well with the leftover sugars, but it turns out that it's a bit too much taste for the type of thing people are expecting. This second one here, it was the first of the passion fruit that I did. I only added 100 grams of passion fruit pulp, frozen pulp, to this thing, and I let it ferment together. And it was great, transparent, great taste, but the taste disappeared fairly quick. And this guy, this third guy here, I did with black currant. And the black currant, I made a jam without sugar, just squished the whole thing, and I have a bread machine and made a jam, and I dump it after the boil. And it fermented beautifully. As you can see, there was a thing going on here, even after the fermentation. It's just the black currant is fairly sour, so, and it was dry to the bone and sour, so I added a little bit more of the fruit after the matter. And this guy here on the right is the one that most upset me so far, which is the watermelon. We're going to talk about it. Is basically, I thought there would be something left from the watermelon, but it was just a watermelon was here at some point. It was too dry. It was terrible. So here we go. When you home brew, you can do this easily. You only need one penny if you want to. I do in the grandfather for the sake of pressing the button and let it do it for me. And now the connections to cool down, everything is there. But you don't need to mash. So there are two processes that you can do it. Obviously, there are many ones, but the most popular ones is the full boil, which you're going to put your whole batch plus a little bit of evaporation or account for evaporation. You're going to fix your pH. You're going to put a Campton tablet to clean the chloramides, if that's the case for you. You're going to add the amount of sugar. Any software you use to do the beer is the same software. And you say you want a 3%, ABV 4, 5, 6. People do even up to I've seen 11 or 12% ABV seltzers. You then add your sugars. You add your minerals. Whatever minerals you think you should add, whatever the feeling is the same as the beer, what kind of feeling you want to do. You want to give it a more taste. You want to mimic something that makes it more refreshing. And one thing that I found really useful is the yeast food. If you, there are two ways people add yeast food. One, I add everything in the beginning, and I did both of them. And you can add some at the beginning and some after 1/3 of the fermentation. If you add it to the end, it's going to be useless because the yeast won't have time to do all the chemical process to get to continue the fermentation. So I found easier to add the whole thing in the beginning and then let it ferment through. If you get a slow fermentation, don't touch it. Let it be slow. It better be slow than getting stuck. I got one that was going slow and I tried to fix it and it became even slower, like half of the speed. So I won't touch anything again on my case until I know exactly what to do there. And the yeast, new yeast from the package is not used to alcohol. You put into a ongoing fermentation, it's not gonna survive. I don't know if any can survive. But if the yeast has been used elsewhere, it might survive, but then it has been used to what? A beer, then you're gonna put some possible taste of beer in there. So add 5 grams for 5 gallons in the beginning of the fermentation, like when you're boiling it, and that's it. And all you gotta do, what I do, is boil 10 minutes just to clear things out. You gotta make sure your sugar has melted there. And then you cool down just like you do the beer, transfer to a fermenter, add your yeast and let it ferment. That is the process 1. So here I boil the whole thing. There is another one that people do, which they ferment about 1/4 of the batch, and you account that some is going to evaporate. And the other 3/4 you leave it separated, and both of them you fix your pH, you add the Camden tablet, minerals, anything you want, and then you're only going to boil the small one, add the sugar there, so you melt the sugar, you sanitize things, and then you're going to dump one on the other, either whatever is the bigger vessel, and that's going to cool down automatically whatever you just boiled. So you don't have to use a chiller. The cold water is the one that is going to cool down whatever you just boiled. And then the same thing, you transfer to the fermenter, add your yeast, and off you go. So here is some experiments that we have done, or I have done. This one we spoke about a little bit. I used frozen passion fruit pulp. It was just 100 grams because I didn't know how much I needed. And those 100 grams were great, as you can see on the right. It came out just perfectly. But after about half or close to half, the taste was too little. So then what I did is I added 100 more grams, left there in the cold crashing for a couple of days, and then I decided to filter it with, as you can see in the third picture here, and it was almost as good as the beginning. Somehow for the passion fruit, this fermentation, not under pressure, but like this, I liked a lot the way that it got incorporated, the flavors got incorporated to the drink. Perhaps if I had got this and added a little bit more of passion fruit and then filtered, it would come out more stable. Another experiment was the watermelon experiment. I was so excited about this. I put the sugar. I found one perfect watermelon. It was so sweet. Oh my goodness. I couldn't believe it. So I just got the juice and I dumped it there. I did not cook or anything. By the end of it, it looked like that, like this, and I was so excited. But when I went to taste, it was just water, not even bubble I had at that time. So I will not add watermelon when I needed to continue the fermentation. After the fermentation, that watermelon would be just perfect. And blackcurrant, I did a lot of different experiments with this thing. First, I added the cooked one, and then I added the raw one, which was frozen as well. But I used my, what's the name of that thing that I used to do a wheatgrass juice and use that machine there. And it was great. It came out, the pulp came out really, really, really clean, no skins or anything, but it was already dirt there with skins, the one I got from the jam. But so after the fermentation was finished, I added the one, the for back sweetening, but still it's very sour right now, but at least you can feel a little bit of the fruit. Before it was way, way, way too dry, and this was very challenging to filter it. I did half of it and the rest I just dumped it in because the filter kept on clogging. So next time I'm gonna brew something like that, I'm going to think about just like dry hopping. How am I going to get this thing without clogging filters? So, summary. There is no secret here, right? It's just like brewing beer. You just add a little bit more of yeast food to make sure, and you double count your yeast to make sure things get continuously processing. What else? One thing that I like, there is no mashing. You just press the button, wait or put to boil. As soon as it's boiling, you dump the sugar, wait 10 minutes if that's what you do. I know Luke is gonna say otherwise, but I like to let it boil. And you calculate your sugar, you add the fruits then or spices, if that's the case, and off you go. I would strongly suggest you just double count. Instead of 1 pack of yeast when you're going to do the first time, to put 2 packs, and then you see where you land. I did get, using 1 pack of US-05, for example, I did get places or results with sulfur. Excuse me. Now, if you are going to bottle it, after you filter it, so you have things ready and it's there filtered, it's carbonated, you're just gonna bottle or can it, I would suggest you at least turn it upside down and turn it normally again. That little bit of shake is gonna guarantee that the taste, not guarantee, but it's gonna help that the taste at least go mix it up a little bit, and or you will get most of it in the bottom and not enough in the top. Yeah, so anyways, don't worry too much. It's a new type of drink. The standards are there, but they're very loose. And if it's transparent, not transparent, just as long as you and your guests enjoy, go for it. And that was it. Nice and sweet and short. While we wait for questions, there's a great book I 110% recommend. Kyle told me about this book and I got it, and it's just amazing. It has a lot of background history, especially for commercial brewers, why they do things in US in a certain way and here in another way. He didn't talk about it here, but you can understand there why things happen in a way. Recipes for commercial brewers, recipe for home brewers, and it's very interesting. So before we go to the questions, I just want to add one thing here. The recipes that I did, I used fruits because I believe that is the harder path. So I want to see how dry could this thing get, and maybe not ferment enough or ferment too much and whatnot. And if it stay 1 month there, would it spoil easily or not? And because that's a concern on commercial brewers. But now, from now on, all we gotta do is get some extract of whatever citric, and dump in there, and with some sugar, and that's it. But now there's a lot of people that separate. So they do the base with sugar only, and once that's ready, they put a tasting batch and they mix. These books talk about it. All right, questions?
Is the only option to carbonate a hard seltzer? I'm guessing you have to force carb it. It's not possible to bottle condition, eh?
Oh, it's possible.
There's enough residual yeast.
That is going to be the question. So I would say if perhaps you mix it up a little bit, you can do it. I don't know, maybe it's something to try. I did most of them under pressure, so I did not worry about that kind of stuff. But although it is transparent, I think the yeast is not going to clear 100% like that. In the beer, we think it's not there, but that yellowish thing, assuming it's a yellow beer, it is from the grain, not because of the yeast, right? So this one, there is no grain, it's transparent, but the yeast should be there.
I'm curious to see what would happen.
What are you using to filter it?
Oh, it's just one of those home filters. The whole house filter is about this big, this big. So I used a 1 micron filter. And the trick is I put it, let's see that if the filter is, let me go behind. The filter is here. The blue are your hoses. You put CO2 from this way, and you keep on smelling here until it smells like a pop. You can't miss the taste. So when it smells like pop here, that means the whole thing is filled with CO2, and it goes really well.
Have you ever played around with any different yeast, Marcelo? Maybe like Belgian strains, anything like that?
Yes, yes. And Belgian, yeah, I don't remember which one was it, but I did do something 256. I did not like. There was a lot of sulfur on that guy on my experiments. USO5 is the easiest. I thought, what else did I try? I tried with 3470, also works really well. So normally you want to go for clean yeast, unless if you're using a Belgian yeast and you have a little bit of Belgian sugar in it, sounds like a good idea. But I would say that if you get a kosher yeast, for example, most likely you're going to have sulfur in it unless you ferment really, really slow, which is already slow fermentation anyways.
Does your USO5 finish at the same gravity as it would with like a all grain batch?
It ferments 100%. All of them ferments 100%. Unless you stop the fermentation and you cool down a cold crash or whatever. So it's not like the beer that it's gonna ferment 70% or 80% or whatnot. No, if it's pure sugar, it's gonna ferment until it's bone dry. Unless you're measuring it and you know, oh, that's my gravity, then you stop. Some people, when they have the two parts, one is the base, right? The other one is the taste. They add potassium sorbate to the taste, and when they mix, it will stop any possible fermentation. Either you do that or you have to pasteurize. I didn't do anything because it's just a home thing, right?
What's a typical OG for this for you? Like 1040?
Yeah, around there. 35, 40, 45, somewhere there. It all depends. You gotta think about two things, right? One is if you're gonna do the base, maybe you wanna go a little bit higher because you're going to dilute with the back sweetener, right? So maybe you go 45, and when you add just the liquid here, which has no alcohol, it's going to dilute, maybe it's going to go 40 or 35. There's a bunch of calculations you can do for that.
So the hard seltzer is almost kind of like alcoholic Perrier.
Yeah,
Have you done
exactly that.
any? Have you done any experiments with mineral adjustments for this? Because like Perrier, one of
Yes,
the big things for that is the mineral taste.
yes. So the first one I added. Which one is that? The one that all of them I add the calcium that gives taste. Which one is that? I keep forgetting. The anyways, there is one of them that add more taste, and but the first one I add Epsom salt because I want to make it refreshing, and it does make a huge difference. If like on the summer, I would 100% do the next one with for 5 gallons about 2 to 3 grams of Epsom salt. Unfortunately, I don't have the mineral in front of me here, otherwise I would tell you what it is.
You use just tap water, Marcelo, though? You're not using like RO or anything like that, right?
No, I'm not just tap water. I add half Campden tablet, and that's it.
How long did your fermentation take?
Normally, it goes 2 weeks. If you do under pressure, it goes 5 days. But so far, I haven't been 100% happy with the under pressure. There is always a little bit of something of sulfur or some a compound that reminds me of sulfur there.
So I've heard that some people are making hard seltzer with malt, or at least partly malt based.
Right.
Have you given that a try to see if it adds more sweetness?
No. The reason they do that is that's an American thing. You could do that here, but they do that in America because of taxation. If you put a little bit of malt and a little bit of hops, there is a certain calculation there. You get taxed as beer and not as a hard diluted hard liquor thing. So some brewers do is because the law says I think they have to put I don't know 37 ounce per hectoliter. So apparently they get the hops used from some other batch, they wash them in, and they dump them in just to say that they did add the hops that were required. It's
I
all
heard
in
that
the
it was
book
also
there.
to do with. Sorry, I heard it was also to do with it being a brewed beverage versus a distilled beverage.
Exactly that. Exactly that. It's just a taxation bracket thing. So if you do the ways I'm doing it, which is just fermentation, you get one bracket of the taxes. But if you add distilled alcohol to it, you're gonna get taxed differently. I don't know if at the end of it in Canada makes a huge difference because a lot of people are doing with the mixed distilled, and it's a marketing thing, right? Because some people drink vodka, and when they see it's a vodka drink, they go for it. Same with the gin and so on and so forth.
Are you using brewing software or anything to like do your calculations?
Because I use the Grandfather, I just go to the Grandfather software, same way I do with the beer. I just put my numbers there, and it tells me what I should be doing.
Your grandfather has a seltzer calculator, like you can calculate how much sugar you need.
Yeah, it's just like a beer. You just don't add the grains. You add just the dextrose or raw sugar, whatever you're going to use to create your ABV. And the fruits, they have some fruits there. All you have to know your ppm, the amount of sugar it has. But it's basically you're going to add the fruits for back sweetening, right? So you don't want to ferment it. You're just going to dilute whatever was fermented there. And the corn sugar you can find on all the homebrew shops, and people use them a lot, right? So you just go there and put it whatever ABV you want, or you say I'm going to add 2 kilos, and it says, oh, that's going to be about this ABV. The only thing you have to keep in mind is when you go to any software, you're going to say, oh, I'm going to use USO5. And the software is going to say, oh, USO5, that's 80% ABV. And you're going to say, no, it's 100% ABV. Any yeast you put it is going to be 100% ABV. All the sugars that you're going to add are going to be fermentable.
Is there any reason you're using corn sugar rather than cane sugar or like cheap white sugar?
Yeah, so I did different things to see, because they all leave a little bit behind. Just the corn sugar does not. So I'm a Brazilian, I like this thing called the caipirinha. So if I get a raw sugar with a little bit of brown sugar and the lime zest, I have a caipirinha. So I just wanted to see how much of leftover the sugars really leave. I got it, I didn't use it yet, but I got a coconut sugar as well. I don't think it's gonna leave anything behind. But then I have to find something to mix with coconut.
Where do you buy your dextrose from, Marcelo? Because it must be a lot. Like, you're obviously not buying it from homebrew store at £1 a time.
Where about you? Where?
Your dextrose.
Oh, I've been buying from homebrew shops. It is not as much as you think, eh? Because it's cheaper than grains. And all you need is what? 2-3 kilos, maybe. But I could buy in bags from the brewery, but I don't think I'll be using that much. It's just experiments, right? And I found raw sugar really nice on, that's something that they stored, I haven't seen there, but on Costco, there's a big, huge bag of raw sugar. I'll show you, hold on.
Keep your sugar outside?
I just found this week, I think it was $10. Oh, you can see. Oh,
Oh yeah.
oh. Okay, technology.
Green screen.
Oh, okay, I can see now. Yeah. So it's $10, and with this I can make 2 or 3 batches. One bag like that is, it ferments 100%. That is the whole thing.
So that bag was corn or cane sugar?
This one is cane sugar.
Oh, cane. Okay.
Yeah.
So before you said that the cane sugar leaves behind a taste that's not desirable, right?
Yes, but I wanted to test, and it's very, 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 very little. I don't think, unless you only have the sugar there and you're really looking for it, maybe you can taste it, but I doubt.
So I'm drinking your black currant now.
Okay.
So it's so pink, it almost looks like my beet pilsner I had in the advent calendar a couple years ago.
Oh, really?
So pink.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's not much sugar. Is it like Mark drinks a lot of sour? You drink sours too, right? A lot of sours. So
Yeah,
and how sour is that for you?
How sour?
Yeah.
I don't know, just on the end of past tart. Not puckering.
That's good. That's good.
It's only souring from the fruit, though, right? Like the acidity of the fruit.
Yeah. Vitamin C.
Mm-hmm.
And is there any back sweetening on it or
Fruit. I added because when it finished the fermentation from the jam, it has this color because the fruit was cooked. Yeah. And so I made a jam, right? Just the fruit, no sugar. But because the fruit cooked, it changed. I could have put chemicals there to clear, but I just want to play with simple things first. And so after it finished, it was sour and dry. It was not pleasant for me. So I added a little bit more of the fruit and then it turned out not too bad.
I guess the thing with using like boiled fruit is it sets all the tannin, so it doesn't clear as nice.
Yes, yes. So it was just to make sure how it works. Next time, maybe I'll make it clear, or I leave it pink.
Mm-hmm.
It's different.
I think you
Marcelo?
drink with. I was gonna say I think you drink with your eyes. So
Yeah,
these drinks are kind of the opposite of that. It's the most water-like looking beverage.
You'd mentioned that yeast health is super important for these because they can't get the nutrients from the wort.
yeah.
What have you been using for yeast health? And have you ever thought of trying out the olive oil trick?
I haven't tried any of olive oil or anything like that. I just have some, I think it's Y yeast, some pot that I got from the local homebrew shop, and I just go there, put it 4 or 5 grams. I've been using 5 grams. Looks like it's a better result. And once you are there, that's it. But I haven't tried none of that. There's a bunch of things. I tried one batch. I have a little bit of something that I use in the brewery, which is something 82. I can't remember those names. Anyways, it's a huge bag that I use for the big batches. I used a little bit of that and didn't make much of a difference. It kept on going, but it's not like it fermented everything much faster because of that kind of nutrient.
So I mean, I think yours are pretty clean, but something that does come to mind is staggered nutrient additions, which we do in the mead world. So
It's
like,
staggering. I'm sorry, I missed that. Staggering what?
so something that we do in the mead world is staggered nutrient additions.
Right, and that's what I said. I did in one of the fermentations, and it did ferment, but I was like, okay, I want to be as lazy as possible here. So instead of adding 2 grams and 2 grams, I just add 5 grams in the beginning and hope for the best. So far, no issues.
And I guess Max, for your question with the olive oil, I think they actually interviewed that guy on the Experimental Brewing podcast a while ago, and he was talking about how when he originally published that paper, it was supposed to be about propagating yeast, not fermenting a drinkable beverage.
Oh,
Yeah, but Brewlosophy also just did a experiment with that too. They reported
yeah.
back that doesn't sound like there's any adverse side effects. Maybe head retention, but that's about it. And you don't really care with the seltzer.
No.
Did they control for? So I haven't read the article, but did they control for oxidation that happens like just during transferring into the fermenters?
So actually, they did it instead of aerating. Here, I'll link the article. It's pretty cool.
Sure. Yeah, I haven't been checking Brewlosophy a lot lately. So before I poo-poo it, maybe I should read it. I won't be able to read it live though.
I think in the Brewlosophy thing though, they used way too much. They used a whole bunch, whereas if I remember the original experiments were using like micrograms of oil, and they dumped in like, I don't know, like a tablespoon or something, which I don't know what the hell they were doing with that, but
they always go to an extreme, right? So
yeah,
it's one of the things they mentioned is they put in way too much on purpose.
All right.
And then, sorry, Marcelo, I also missed, I think you said double the amount of yeast you would normally use at the beginning?
Yes, so instead of 1 pack, I added in the beginning 2 packs, and that did speed up better, did ferment better. And then I started saying, okay, now let me try 1 pack, and it was a bit slower. So still I have to come out with a balance. I used lately phosphoric acid instead of lactic acid, and the phosphoric acid end up neutralizing some of the minerals. So I still have to find a way to add a little bit more minerals than what I should be adding to see if that helps a little bit. Another part that is missing is the nitrogen, I believe, and you can add something called DAP to help you with that. But I'm not trying to make it complicated. I'm just trying to let it ferment as naturally as possible.
Cool. Thanks.
No problem.
All
What's
right.
the shelf stability like
Oh.
on this stuff? Like, are you
Yeah.
seeing any sort of oxidation at all? Or
No oxidation. I have got, it's just common sense, right? So if you do lagers or IPAs, no, let's forget about lagers. If you do IPAs, you know that this much oxygen is going to cause a huge issue. On these guys, although I went very religious with this oxidation thing, I noticed that it does oxidize in a much slower pace than IPAs. And so I have some here. I think I still have some. They're like 2 months old and they're still fine.
Mhm.
The issue is always from the fermentation. Like I have some with sulfur issues, and the sulfur is taking much longer to dissipate. I don't understand why, but I'm pretty sure it's because it's very thin. So what people do to extend shelf life, if they do not have pasteurization, they add potassium sorbate. And on that book, on this book here, they tell you exactly how much potassium sorbate to put in a 5-gallon batch, depending on what kind. They teach you many recipes like 4%, 6%, 12%, and they give you a bunch of tips there on how to add it to stop for any fermentation.
did you come across anything that discussed citric acid addition after the fact?
Yes, I've seen citric acid addition there. I did not read all of the recipes in details to know why they did it, but I do recall seeing citric acid there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so basically, in terms of taste, it's just like anything else, right? If you add any lime, it's going to go up. Passion fruit or any of this citric stuff. But if you do something like a mango, like just a comparison on the passion fruit, I used 100 grams of frozen pulp, and there was enough. Let it ferment to the end. That was enough to taste like a seltzer. Now, when I use mango, I used 1.2 kilos of frozen pulp, and did not turn out good. I had to add the passion fruit to it because it dry to the bone. It does not stand out. So if you use mango, you better use as back sweetening with some potassium sorbate and stuff like that.
What's your favorite fruit combination from your experience?
I like simple things. So on that front, I like the passion fruit because it's something that I eat and drink juice a lot back home, so I can relate to it. I am really dying to try a lime combination or with some leftover sugars kind of idea. And also grapefruit. I am really interested of doing something with grapefruit. So now it's gonna, the next one I'm gonna do it, instead of adding fruit, I'm going to add this fruit extracts or crystallized fruits and things like that to see if I get any difference. When I did the watermelon, it was terrible, right? Because it dried to the bone, and I didn't realize the watermelon was purely sugar dependent. So I got an extract to dump into it, but when I open it, it tastes like bubble gum. So I said, I'm not gonna do this. So you have to know what you're adding. So I'll have to research to somebody to tell me, oh, if you can use this, that it is somewhat natural or taste natural, because I don't want to be drinking medicine or something that tastes like medicine.
So with that, why don't we call the presentation for today? Thank you, Marcelo, for presenting. Really
Thank you.
appreciate you taking the time to put this together and talk to us. I guess we hadn't mentioned it yet, but thank you for bringing up that slide. So if anyone isn't aware, Marcelo has a brewery called Paniza Brewing. You can find it at many LCBOs. I believe currently just the Pilsner, or is both the Pilsner and the Doppel?
Current just the Pilsner. We are trying to get into with the Bock on the grocery stores, but the grocery stores are in a little bit delicate state at this point because of COVID.
Right. So I guess that all that to say, please support Marcelo and help support more of us going pro. And once again, thank you, Marcelo. I guess we can keep talking after I hit the stop button. Thanks.